I'll just explain a little bit about this, and hopefully there'll be someone that will run the slides. But what will happen is there's 3 questions that we're going to ask ahead of time, and we do that sort of to give people a sense of like, how does one have a conversation about these kinds of things now that it's in the air, and then we'll open it up to you. And when that happens, I'll have you ask your questions from where you are. I'll repeat the question so that we get it on camera, and then you can direct that to a specific person or to anybody. And then also for people that are listening online, you can tweet your questions. You can be thinking about that, and we'll check those. And what's the tweet at?
It's at StoriesBTR.
Stories
on Twitter.
BTR.
StoriesBTR.
Twitter. Yep. All right. Okay, so first question is really simple, hopefully, until the third part of it. So who are you? What was your involvement with Intrigue? And then what is a memorable date fail for you?
I'm going first. I'm Michael, the guy that was in that last video. So the crazy guy who, for whatever reason, thinks about guns under tables. Sometimes. Not all the time. Just, a couple times a day. Not that often, just a couple times an hour. I wrote and directed. And what's a date fail?
Mm-hmm. A memorable date fail.
Memorable date fail.
Which means you have to at least remember it to tell it.
That's, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I have, I might have been lucky and not had a lot of, I think I had dating fails. That was a poor choice in person to ask out. But generally the dates were okay. The dates were all right themselves. Yeah, I think, maybe this is a sort of pseudo date fail. It wasn't exactly an official date. But my first kiss happened with this girl that I was dating at the time. And it just coincided with the weekend where she, for whatever class it was that she had to do this, she had to watch the realistic baby with the little electronics in it that made it cry at times and all that kind of stuff. So you figure out if you're going to be a good parent. So she's watching this thing, and we kissed somehow. That's kind of a weird situation for a first kiss, for sure. So that's kind of a fail, I think, in retrospect. We couldn't have found, a better time for that. I don't know. So that's kind of a fail. Baby, yeah.
Let's kiss. Okay.
Yeah, so much wrong with that scenario.
You should make it into a movie.
Probably.
Hi, I'm Diana Porter, and I played Natasha/Carol. And so my husband gave me permission to tell this story. When we were first dating, we were cuddling, and he said something. He gave me some really nice compliment, and I said, "Oh, you're so smooth." And then he elbowed me in the face. He just happened to be shifting position as I said, "You're so smooth." And even better, roughly 9 years later, I was putting my son to bed, cuddling with him, and he said something nice to me, and I said, "Aw, you're such a little charmer." And then he clocked me in the face with his elbow. So do not tell Porter men that they are smooth or charming or anything, because you might end up with a black eye. Fair warning.
It's funny the things that turn out to be genetic. So I'm Christina, and I always forget what I did. So I produced, assistant directed, script supervised, cooked the food.
Such
Everything.
good food.
Everything.
Oh, thank you.
Super good chili.
Oh, yay. And I couldn't remember any of my date fails, but Dom remembered them fine. And even the ones he wasn't there for. And so...
Even the ones he was stalking you for.
That is weird. There was a high five in the back for those of you who can't see that. So he reminded me of a one that it was so embarrassing. We decided we were going to try to make out in our car. And so we're trying to get near the water in this kind of nice residential section, and they don't have any water available for people just driving by. It's just like houses upon houses. And Dominic's car, for pretty much until he got married, sounded like, it was like always a bad muffler. So the people in that neighborhood didn't like the sound of that car, apparently, because they called the cops. And so we decided we would just pull over to the side of the road. And so he was like clearing out the back of his car seat, not trunk. And a cop drove up behind us with the lights off. So, like, where was he and how long had he been driving with the lights off? And thankfully, I was still in the front seat and he was in the back seat, so we could be like, we were just looking for something. and, and then drive away. But so that was a fail. I don't know what the comment was. Was it the cop knew what I was looking for?
Yes.
So, number 2. So we all get in ruts from time to time. What is a way that you easily get in a rut, and how do you try to get out of it?
Well, arguably, I think I made this movie as a sort of get out of a rut method. I hadn't, well, the time I wrote the script, I hadn't been doing a lot of writing. So this was a means to sort of get creative juices flowing again. And so, because I had been way too busy with life as a new dad, and just sort of lots of things going on and sort of really adjusting to that. So not a lot of time, not a lot of energy or motivation even to find that time to sit down and try to do something creative. But one particular day this thought occurred to me, and so that was kind of a get out of a rut kind of situation in and of itself, because writing this script really quickly was like a quick outlet to be like, okay, here, like creative juice is flowing again. I can still do this, okay. And it's also just very different for me because, as I alluded to in the video, I tend towards oftentimes very sort of seriously toned kind of stories. So it's kind of fun to be able to do something different and be like, can I do this? Or, am I really only like in this specific niche? Or can I do something that's much more lighthearted and funny and actually pull it off? So that's like one way, but just in general, I think sometimes I have to step away and go back to sources of inspiration. So I find that if I'm in a bit of a rut, I gotta step back and stop trying so hard, actually, in a lot of ways, and return to sources of inspiration, or just spend time with people. Stop trying to work so much and just be with people. Those things generally help me get myself out of my head a little bit, which is generally the problem of being a rut. I'm just too inside my own head, and then you tend to spiral, and things somehow become bigger or worse or better than they really are when you're kind of stuck in your mind. So,
So anybody who's ever seen a chorus line knows that being an actor, it can be really easy to get inside your own head because you're always facing criticism and facing rejection. So it's really easy to start turning inwards with that. And I think it's something a lot of actors have to learn to deal with. And the things that I always try to keep in the back of my mind when I start getting into that rut of self-criticism is definitely seeing people. Like going out and seeing my friends definitely saves me. Gardening, big one. Exercising, which also goes with the gardening. So this winter was really hard. These are like my 3 fifths. But then I saw no one. I was trapped in my house. I couldn't go anywhere. But all of my plants were really well watered. But also doing charity work. I think because you can't concentrate on yourself when you're doing charity work. So it like forces you out of that brain space in a really healthy way. So.
Nice. I think the biggest rut for me is like food. So I'll just start making the same food all the time. So buying a new cookbook can be very helpful. Or I have these friends that just post recipes on Facebook all the time, so I can steal from them, and so that can be helpful. But Dom and I were talking through these before I came, and we were talking about earlier on in our relationship. We were like, what did we do to get out of a rut? And we're like, we had kids. Wow. and so, and then we're like, have we been in a rut since? I'm not sure. Like, it's just go, go, go. So yeah, there's different things that we've tried otherwise. Like we implemented a date night after we had 3 kids. So 16 years, and we didn't do date night. We didn't need date night. We spent plenty of time together. And then we're like, we need a date night, which consists of watching shows, because that's like, oh my gosh, there is a TV and it's on. And but yeah, I think sometimes we get sick of shows, and then we might play a game or talk.
What?
Sometimes we talk to each other.
Or pretend you're spies.
Yeah, I know. I keep thinking, like, should we try this? I know you didn't you didn't recommend it per se, but we'll talk about it later. Yeah. Number 3. So in the behind-the-scenes video, Michael advocates for not taking ourselves too seriously. And so what's been a good way for you to try and not take yourself too seriously?
I don't know, I just take myself too seriously. Do you have an answer?
When I first started thinking about this, I thought immediately about work, and I'm like, I don't take myself too seriously. As you could see from the behind-the-scenes footage, I do not take myself too seriously at work. Sometimes it's a problem. You're supposed to be really upset in this scene. Yeah, but I'm making stupid faces. Yeah, but I feel like that's something that I need to work on at home, because when you really need to get the house clean, everybody's coming for Thanksgiving, that's when I start taking myself way too seriously. But I think having kids can really help with that, because kids really don't care about getting the house clean for Thanksgiving, and giving myself 5 minutes out of every hour to play, some stupid video game with my son would probably be the best possible thing I could think to do, because he's awesome.
Did you think of anything yet?
Yeah. Oh, I was listening, actually. I was trying to not take myself too seriously and actually listen
And
to
be
other people.
completely absorbed in
Right.
what you might say.
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, I joke around a lot, I guess, but I don't know that constitutes really not taking yourself too seriously, because I think ultimately I kind of do, especially at home, I identify with that. But it's nice to, I think, again, connection with people helps you get out of your own head, and brings back sort of a little bit of level playing field. And so I think a lot of times connecting with people who know you well. You talked about date night. My wife and I have been kind of doing that since we've had a kid, because it's time to connect and all of that. And that's an important relationship, and I think it helps me. Nobody knows you better than your spouse, right? So yeah, there's a lot of being able to be reminded, don't take yourself too seriously, because this person knows all your worst flaws. But they still love you, so it's cool, that's, you can't be all that bad, but you're probably also not the amazing, clever, awesome person that you think you are in your head when you sit on the toilet and pretend that you're on, The Tonight Show, all the answers that you came up with, So,
Yes.
now it's I can't even think of who's even on there. See, that's how out of the loop and not serious I am. I can't be like, so Dave, and because they're all gone. No Leno, no Dave. But yeah, you.
Yeah. So I think initially I would have said I don't take myself very seriously, because I'm always joking around. But there are times, it's similar to, I think, maybe your story, when I'm trying to get stuff done. So it's when I'm trying to get my daughter all looking like a doll for her dance recital, holy cow, I'm really serious. It's just an hour of scary. But So yeah, that does happen to me. And this other thing that's really weird is if I'm watching a video of myself, whether because I used to sing opera or whatever, I'll start to like do the emotions again. So, like my face will start doing weird things, which Dominic will point out. Like, "Oh, are you enjoying yourself?" I'm like, no, nothing's happening here. So I feel like other people pull me out of like we do spend a lot of time with other people. So I feel like if I ever get too serious, somebody calls me out on it pretty quickly. And so that's true at home, and that's true when we leave the house. So it's nothing I do specifically, it's what everybody else does. So.
You're just around a bunch of jerks like us.
No. So that's our questions, and so what we'll do now is turn it over to all of you. And so if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand, and then I'll repeat the question that you ask, and then you can address it to anybody. Do any of us keep a loaded gun in the house?
I do not, but my father was a hunter. So I actually did grow up with, not loaded, but with guns in the house. And my other date fail story option was, it's a little bit blue, but in high school, my boyfriend and I, my parents were out. My boyfriend and I thought we had the house to ourselves. We were making out on the couch. And my brother walked in, and I was facing my boyfriend. My boyfriend was facing where my brother was, and I saw his eyes go from my brother to the gun rack and back to my brother. And my brother said, "John, I believe you'll be leaving now." And my brother's 6 years older than I am, so he was already, I think, maybe even out of college. Like, he was an adult in our minds. Yeah, he would have been out of college by then. So yeah, grew up around guns, but do not have one.
Yeah, I don't actually own a gun. I have experience firing them and whatnot, and family members who own them, so I'm sort of familiar with them, but have never gone for owning one myself. But yeah.
Yeah, we don't have guns either. We have 2 sets of knives. That's incidental.
Throwing knives,
It's
ninja
so
stars.
weird. Like, you know, we got the wedding set, and then another set came from his parents years later, and I couldn't throw out the wedding set, so I just keep them both because I feel bad. So, but I've always what are you going to do? Excuse me, I need to get downstairs quick, get a knife, and come back. Like, I don't know. I'm more apt to go out the window.
Keep it under the pillow.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. How do we get the set? What do we do?
Yeah, in this particular instance, this is a house that belongs to someone that we know, someone that was in the last movie that we premiered, and she was gracious enough. They were actually traveling at the time anyway, so they were gracious enough to allow us to come in and use their really cool dining room with that really cool chandelier.
Such a beautiful house.
Yeah. So we were very fortunate there. We have done for other films, you know, securing locations. We've even transformed this space sometimes into, you know, the lab for Parallel. So it just depends. But a lot of times, you know, we don't have budgets for these things, you know. So there's no renting a soundstage and then building a set. Someday, maybe, but not yet. So these are all generally real locations, and then we, you know, maybe do some amount of set dressing. We really didn't have to do any set dressing for this place. We just needed, you know, a few props, the bottle, the glasses, and the pill vial, things like that, but no real.
They already
set.
had the gun taped underneath the table.
Yeah, it was
Not
just there. Right, that's right, the gun, which is not a real gun, by the way. It's a airsoft replica. But yeah.
Yes. What was your influence in theater, film?
I started off in theater as most, I think, actors do, doing high school theater and then community theater. And then when I came to the realization that I wanted to be an actress full time, I chose to do film. I love film. I loved film from when I saw Pulp Fiction. I was just like, oh my God, this is an art form. But the thing about the difference for an actor where I am between theater and film is theater is a 3-month commitment. In that time, I could easily make 10 short films and a feature and 10 commercials on top of that. So it's a choice for me. Every now and then I do start getting tempted to do summer stock, or especially in the winter times, there are some really great like holiday productions and things. Production tends to slow down on all the films during the winter time. But I do love both. And for specific influences, other than Pulp Fiction being like, getting that kicked up, there's a lot of really interesting short films out there. And I love the short film format. It forces the writing into a really interesting place. And it's a challenge. When you have a ton of time and a ton of money, it can be a little bit easier. But when you have to stick it all into 5 minutes, that's hard. Developing a character in 5 minutes, that's hard. And it gives you some really fun things to play with.
Yeah. I think summer after my 5th grade year, that's when Jurassic Park came out. So that was, I think, the moment that I was like, yeah, I want to do this. For other directors, maybe it was Star Wars before that. But for me, it was Jurassic Park, which is ironic because I haven't been out to see Jurassic World yet. Again, busy, baby, all those fun things. Sometime I'll get out and watch it. But yeah, I studied theater in college as well, and so that was definitely influential there in that sense of sort of getting a sense of directing actors, and even acting did some amount of that. So it was certainly helpful there. But yeah, I think my biggest sort of initial influence were movies like Jurassic Park. My influences now, I sort of on the polar opposite side, directors like Terrence Malick, who direct these very lyrical, very experiential films that are not, necessarily driven by big explosions and dinosaurs or big creatures chomping on people and things like that. So I'm kind of all over the map a little bit.
Yeah. And then I started in opera, and then I quit and put it away for a long time to do like working with people stuff. And then I ran into Michael, and we were like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to do short films in church services? And so we started doing this, and then it was bigger than I imagined it would be, and we just kept going. And so now we make films, yeah. Yes?
In this one and in Peril, each time you've got a photo representation, which really has been turned into more of a painting than a photo. What have you been doing?
Oh, like the posters, you mean? Or
The
like,
poster. Surely that's her.
Right.
This
mm-hmm.
is significantly changed. You did the same thing in Peril. What did you do? Why?
I do a decent amount of, first of all, I mean, we shoot photographs sort of planning ahead, thinking, okay, I'm going to try to
And I'm
build
wearing a
poster.
lot of makeup in that picture.
Yeah. You were playing up the part, right? The femme fatale.
Well, I recognize her here.
Oh, no,
The man in Peril, I did not recognize when you're sitting next to me.
But yeah, I do a decent amount of Photoshop work and style. Like this is particularly stylized because of the first half of the movie being a spy movie. So I borrowed a lot from that. So has a lot of pushing the darker colors towards blues. And giving it this sort of very filmic look. And it's also processed to emulate a particular film stock. So, playing with those sort of elements and the amount of contrast helps to give it kind of this very gritty spy movie kind of feel. So, a lot of photoshopping. Yeah.
Anybody else? And are there any on here?
I haven't seen anything come in.
Okay. Any
I
other?
see one.
Oh, okay. Do you want to ask it?
Sure, yeah. The question is, what's your favorite genre to work in? Favorite genre? Wow. Do you have a favorite genre?
I don't have a favorite genre. I really enjoy them all, but I am really loving doing comedy. It's hard to get chances to do comedy around here. New England tends a lot towards drama and horror. Lots of horror in New England. And I've done a fair share of action films, but comedy is rare, and I find that I love it because I pull faces a lot. And I get to pull faces when I do comedy, so that's fun.
Yeah, when I was color grading this, there was a few frames. I was like, oh, I should save these. These are beautiful. Just awesome facial expressions. It's great. I love it. I think I like jumping around genres a little bit, but I think I always end up coming back to my roots in some ways. In that I really do like working in science fiction. So it's kind of where I first fell in love with Jurassic Park and everything, and Michael Crichton as an author was a big influence on me growing up as well, and so being able to tap into that world that it tends to be very sort of readily equipped to dive into big philosophical questions, that a regular drama might not be. When you suddenly have, the ability to do something like clone extinct animals that might rampage and eat people. What's the ethical ramification of doing that, right? It's not necessarily going to come up, in a sort of domestic drama. Even though I like those as well. But I think, I have a natural affinity towards science fiction and just love diving into that world. But I also love laughing, so it's really good to, be able to experiment with a little comedy for a change.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to laugh and I like to cry. So if I can laugh and cry, then I'm like, that was the best ever! But I don't like to scream. And that's what usually happens. I'll scream before anything's actually happened, which is why I can't see anything scary in a movie theater. Because everyone else will be sitting fine in their seats, and I'm like, ah! So, yeah. That'll be fun.
It'll be fun, yes. I have a couple more questions from Twitter if you
Okay.
want them. What was your favorite part of making this particular movie?
Nice.
From Olivia on Twitter. Thank you. Favorite part? Yeah, you should
Let
go
me
first,
think.
please. Yeah.
My favorite part.
Favorite part?
Well, I think the cough after the drink is just so funny. And I've thought about it when I've done my own drinking. We got this bourbon, because I wanted whiskey and they didn't have it, so we went with bourbon, and I was like, it's on fire, oh my God. So I'm like, I'm gonna have heartburn for days. So I think of that moment that, this happens to me, and then I think of that moment of the fake cough, because it's like yucky, gross soda, right? It's like, so, yes, I think that's my favorite part.
And I think favorite part for me, I think, again, just a little bit of being able to branch out and experiment a little bit and do something kind of, I do a lot of joking around on set, but then it's like, okay, it's time to roll camera and like you're heartbroken because your dad's dying. There's a lot of that on my sets. And so to be able to be like, okay, we're joking around and let's just keep keep going. It's kind of nice. But I think one of my favorite moments in this movie is the combination of actors really running with the script and really getting into it, and the editing, the editor really taking off with the idea as well. So it's when you struggle to say nanobots, the nanorobots, and that was yes, and that was, you know, that was written that way, and she did it so well. But then in editing, Trevor, our editor, lengthened that even more, and it's just, I think it's just great. And just, I don't know, I just admire the character in that moment. Like, man, you're really committed to getting this word out. But it's not happening. And which just makes that moment of, yeah, those, that much better.
Microtechnology does it for him.
Yes,
I'm just trying to be there for my husband.
It's something about small things.
Oh,
He's not here to defend himself.
on that note, I'll say my favorite part was working with Aaron. He was really, really wonderful to work with. He brought such great energy to it, and it's really easy to be funny when the person you're acting with is being funny with you, not at you, not near you, but with you. And we were playing. We were having a great time together, and he would lend me his jacket in between takes because it was cold.
It was February, and it was very very
snow
chilly.
is in the windows.
Yeah. So high. We have another Twitter question. So what is your favorite movie? From Michael Newman?
I hate this question.
Favorite movie? Yeah, no, it's a tough one, right?
It's like picking your favorite child. Like, there's so many great movies, and it so depends on my mood. And I very often default to the Rocky Horror Picture Show because that's how I met my husband. And many, many, many of my friends. So it's totally for emotional reasons because, honestly, that movie's terrible. But after shadow casting it for 12 years and meeting my husband there and most of my best friends, I've definitely got an affinity for it. Yeah. And it has a wonderful message.
Yeah, favorite movie. I think, yeah, I have a hard time always like picking, like sometimes people ask, like, what top 10 favorite movies? I really have not categorized them there. I think there's two, though, that are movies that I can come back to time and again. One's a little newer, one's been around for 20 years now. But Shawshank Redemption and The Tree of Life seem to be the movies that I just like come back to time and again. So.
Well, so I like movies for their quotes, I think. And so there was one called America's Sweethearts. It was like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Julia Roberts. And there's this part where John Cusack, he says, he just wouldn't quit, you know, so I hit him in the tray with my face. And I just think it's so funny. And then what was that? Sweet Home Alabama was Reese Witherspoon. And the guy says, why you want to marry me anyway? She's like, so I can kiss you anytime I want. And I just really like that. It comes up in my head all the time. So I don't know if that's related to the whole movie, but I really like those quotes.
Nice.
And I'm shallow.
Nah.
Are there any more?
Nah. Well, I don't see any at the
Okay.
moment. So.
Any other questions here? Yes.
Probably my favorite part of it is that Tarrant is the main actor.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to come out of character, the real character,
Yeah.
and you're standing with your back to him, turn around and you get up and you're walking out of the room, and the look on his face is adjusting his tie.
It's still on. It's still on.
It was such a dry face.
Yeah. There's a creep factor to it on some level.
All part of my plan. I mean, that's the thing you don't know, right? Maybe it was just like all part of his plan. Because secretly, what he really likes is angry sex.
This was the inception of role play sex night.
Yeah. And it was all a dream. Because you notice the top on that was no, I'm just kidding. There's no top.
All right, so it seems like we've pretty much wrapped up. So you're welcome to check out any of the Stories by the River films at storiesbytheriver.org. And this one will go up probably in the next couple days. And we'll put announcements on Facebook. So Stories by the River is a Facebook page as well. And obviously Twitter. Yeah. So we'll let you know when this one comes out. Anything else you want to add?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, since I have the opportunity, I'd encourage you to also check out the page for the feature film that we're in development for. The movie's called Unidentified, so you can look it up on Facebook and follow there what is going on with that. There's a novel that we're publishing for that, and then we're trying to get everything set in place, raise the funding for it and all of that so that we can make a full-length feature film and be able to sort of branch into a new direction with that. So I encourage you, please go check that out, hit like on it, and follow the Twitter feed for that as well. Those likes and followers and signing up for the mailing list are all hard numbers that we can present to investors to show, like, look, there's interest here, and that's always a helpful thing to show that we're connecting with potential audience. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so feel free to hang out, have more to eat, and talk to people, mingle, take pictures, whatever you want to do. Thank you.